Hey guys, welcome back to Inside the Voice Actors Booth. I'm Christy Kate, and today Soundbox Studio Group is presenting Brad Venable. Soundbox Studio Group has a bunch of studios in the Los Angeles area, even one in Colorado. Their headquarters is on Melrose. They do have some in Sherman Oaks, South Bay, and Studio City. I myself have been there before. They have actor services where if you're in a rush and you need an audition, they can help you out with that. Now, today I have with me Brad Venable. He has been in Devil May Cry 5, Rainbow Butterfly Unicorn Kitty, a bunch of anime, including One Piece, and I think you started your career off with World of Warcraft, which is a big entity to start with.
Not too much, yeah.
So with regards to beginning, how would you say you started acting? Was it something that you always wanted to do at a very young age, or was that...
Well, my mother would like to never stop reminding everyone that I ran around with a microphone that was destroyed, no wire on it, singing Kenny Rogers around the house. So that's basically, when I was 3 years old, I was going to be a performer, at least in some way, form, or fashion. But
nice.
Yeah, I've my whole life I've done some sort of performing, whether it was singing or whether it was performing on the stage or.
Well, and you have a beautiful singing voice. You do operatic singing.
Not so much anymore, but I did. I went to college on an opera scholarship.
Really?
Yeah.
What college was that?
University of Tulsa.
Tulsa, okay. Mm-hmm. So did you initially think that you were going to be an opera singer someday? Or?
Well, that was the plan when I took the scholarship, and then things changed while in school, and then I left school, and it was going to be... decided that it was just too much because I'm the farm boy from Oklahoma, so it's really hard to hear a person who is your teacher say, well, in order to sing here perform here in America here, you have to basically spend 10 to 15 years touring and living in Europe.
Oh,
which was tough to hear that.
Yeah.
And that was inevitably like the last thing that I decided was was going to keep me from doing that as a career.
Gotcha.
So I stopped, before I left school.
Did they want you to learn songs in like Italian?
Oh yeah, I sang songs, and of course in Italian, we did opera and opera theater, some in English, in fact, because there are, believe it or not, there are lots of English language opera. You don't really see it that often, but there is a great amount. I mean, Arthur Miller's The Crucible was made into an opera, which actually was one of the first seasons of Tulsa opera that I was involved in. And we didn't get to be part of The Crucible because it was a very, very small company with no choir involved. But there's many languages: Italian, German, French, English.
Are you fluent in multiple languages? No, okay.
Not at all. It's funny, I'm about 110 days deep in Duolingo trying to actually learn German and Russian, which is, and I probably should start learning Japanese as well, because it's hard to be around all of my friends who are in anime who decide to just start dropping their knowledge in Japanese. So it's really hard. It's very hard, especially when you're as old as I am.
Especially like with the anime, like the pronunciation of some of the things that you have to say. I'm sure having a general knowledge of Japanese would probably help with mentioning these characters in the shows.
Yeah, culturally, that's why there are a lot of folks who, for good or for ill, get really deep into Japanese culture. I mean, some people get so deep in it that they forget the culture they're currently living in, and that happens. I mean, it's just a thing that people do. I mean, if you're a huge fan of a thing, it's hard sometimes to draw boundaries about this being life and like 42, the answer to life, universe, and everything, and then other things. And I just want to make sure that I have enough cultural knowledge that I'm not completely illiterate.
Yeah, and you want to be respectful.
Exactly. That's the end result is hoping for treating things, especially in dubbing, because there's such a huge, I don't know why, there's a huge, subs versus dubs thing going on online at any, constant clip. And, it's like, if you enjoy something, I mean, I would rather personally, like Parasite, Best Picture, awesome movie, by the way.
It was great.
I mean, it deserved it every bit. I wouldn't want to watch an English version of that, mainly because that is a bit jarring. Because I don't know if I don't know about the respect that's given in live action as much, except through the lens of Netflix, which has been wonderful for the dubbing community, both animated and live action, which I've been a part of a lot since we've come to an agreement with the union has come to an agreement with Netflix at large, and they want to dub everything that they acquire in all countries. They want to dub an English version, and they tend to do it with great respect and with great accuracy. Mm-hmm. And that's a thing that's always another fight between people who speak the original language of a thing versus people who watch dubbed.
Because the interpretation is always slightly different.
It totally is. And then, certain things don't translate one-to-one. Some things are better translated in context, in broad, like paint roller strokes, as opposed to, very, very detailed down to, some people will just demand that you from a subtitled performance, original language, that it needs to be one-to-one. Mm-hmm. And well, some things culturally do not equate. In fact, we talk about Parasite. I was just doing some research because I'm fascinated with Bong. He's such a great director. Just listening to him give even through an interpreter giving interviews is just brilliant.
Well, and his interpreter, I've heard, is very good because she can pick up on little sayings that I guess he's saying, and she can interpret that in a way
it's like being someone's full-time assistant for a while. After a while, you can pretty much predict when someone means something by their tone of voice or their posture or something. So But with him, the fun part of it is when they were subtitling it, when they were translating for the subtitling, they came up with Ramdan. That scene, there's a scene where someone has to cook a combined ramen udon noodle with steak in it. Doesn't give anything away. Sorry, spoilers. It's not really a spoiler. But that was made up. In the subtitles, that title was something completely different, called something completely different in the Korean language. So even the subtitles aren't one-to-one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very anecdotal piece of evidence, of course. So you don't really have, that's the proof that even subs aren't even, the same as, anyway. That argument can be made, ad nauseum. Yeah. But that's a prime example of some things that culturally, in order to get somebody, they call it, like in Parasite, they call it Ramdan, so that it's easily like a conglomerate of two things that we as English Westerners know. Oh, ramen and udon, that together. It's really kind of what it is, but it's also not. It's just something that we understand, that you can actually go buy it at an Asian market, put it together, make it yourself, and you have a concept of what it is, as opposed to some sort of cultural statement that only applies to Japanese folks, as opposed to the dubbing. The people who watch dubbed anime per se wouldn't necessarily get the same cultural reference. I mean, they do, because most people who watch anime have a real affinity for Japanese culture, so they already understand it from a cultural standpoint. But to the average person that's scrolling through Netflix, it's much more accessible to them. Mm-hmm. And, like that old webcomic, it's grabbing someone's lips and going, let people like things on the internet.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to do.
Now, when you were growing up, did you watch a lot of anime
or
any of that?
Because
it sounds like you have a lot of respect now.
I do. I have respect all the way back, but I didn't know what I was watching when I did watch it. And what I started off was Robotech.
Okay.
Which is a spin-off reimagining of Macross, and which is funny because now one of my good friends in this industry,
Tony Oliver,
and my most respected directors, Tony Oliver, was Rick Hunter in in Robotech. So it's like, here I am, and 8-9 years old in the 80s. Yes, I'm old. Sorry, but watching this and going, this is the most cool thing I've ever watched. I've never watched anything like it. I mean, Thundercats was probably the closest thing to it.
Nice.
I mean, Transformers had its moments from a stylistic, but there was stakes. There were stakes to be made. People people were killed and, planes were shot down. It was like the next progression. I think it was like, oh, this is the closest thing that we have in Japanese culture to Star Wars.
Yeah.
This is something that the Western audiences will like. And I don't know, that might be true. It might not be. I don't know. But I missed a lot of what are really the crazes now. I only partially watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because it was at the very end of the 80s, right when I was starting to become middle teenager and going into high school. And Power Rangers, same thing, which of course has its own story about how it was one thing and then it was all dubbed into something completely different, and the rest is history. But yeah, that's really the only real exposure I had was through those things through my cousins. But I would say the only Japanese cultural, centered thing that I really had exposure to when I was a kid was Robotech.
It sounds like though that you were really into cartoons from
Very
what
much.
you were mentioning,
Yeah.
So from that, was that kind of what inspired you to kind of veer into voiceover when you were done singing opera, or was it?
It's funny.
How did that like look for you? Was it always a clear choice?
It became a clear choice when I was in college. I was a social person, not like terrible partier type person, but I did. I pledged a fraternity. Didn't go through with it because I'm a poor. I'm a poor farm boy from Shakota, Oklahoma, and so it wasn't like one of those things where I just felt like that I belonged. I still went to parties. I was like student body vice president my junior year, and I started doing bad cartoon impersonations. So it basically got me entrance privileges to the fraternity parties that I didn't necessarily belong in, and it also got me the good beer.
Okay.
As like the, because you get like the Schlitz and the natural light and stuff from the. That's the cheapest stuff that you could buy for a giant party that may or may have 200-300 people in it. Instead, I'm drinking Shinerbach and, some of the other, more top shelf beer.
It's not Bud Light.
No, well, it's a lot of things, but it was those kind of things that started making me understand that I had an affinity for doing this. For even now, I have an affinity for voice match, which is part of one of the things that I do. And it got my ear was always good because I grew up in the Church of Christ, so that when we went to church, we don't have instruments. That it was all a cappella singing, so we all had perfect pitch. Or if we didn't have perfect pitch, somebody blew a pitch pipe and we were all like immediately locked into our parts. And so it was very, very easy for me to hear the nuances of a character, and I always wanted to figure out how mechanically characters were created. One of my good friends in college, he was one of the biggest Simpsons fans I've ever met in my life, and still to this day one of the biggest Simpsons fans. This guy had more VHS tapes than he knew what to do with, and before we had DVR, we had to do that. Sorry, I had beans at lunch. Just so you know, no kidding. But no, I started trying to do bad impersonations, and it wasn't I was trying to do bad ones. I was trying to do good ones. I just didn't know what I was doing. And, so I tried to do Homer. And
that's the noise of Homer.
Sounds like Homer was trying to belch there. But
yeah.
The thing was I couldn't figure exactly how to shape the voice that Dan Castellaneta was doing. And I would try to do this thing where it was this nasally thing, but it was like, okay, it's not quite there. It's got some traits, right? But finally, which was the greatest thing in the world, was Inside the Actors Studio on Bravo had the cast of The Simpsons on it, which was a huge coup for animation in general because you got people who are interested in people who act without props, without makeup, without sets. And it was just like, those were huge eye-opening moments for me that you really can do this for a living. Yeah. And this is in the, mid to late 90s, early 2000s when before what most people consider to be the great exodus of a lot of work to pay-to-play websites, which when they came about was around the time of the writer's strike. And I'm sure that folks in this city know all about that. But it was something that I was able to see Dan shape his instrument. And he did it with an underbite.
So I'm doing this thing. Okay, it's pretty close, but all of a sudden I drop it. Oh my God, I'm doing the voice.
And it was, it was just that mechanical change made me realize that not just acting, but also some oddball way of creating a shape. I mean, because
it doesn't have to just be what you would expect your mouth
and in fact,
to do.
Dan's first voice wasn't anything like that for Homer. It was more of a really what we would call a really bad Walter Matthau impersonation. Because if you watch when they were the shorts on Tracy Ullman in 1989, again, I'm old, and in seasons 1 and 2, he sounded way different. Of course, there was also a shift about the focus of the show that happened once. Originally, it was like we had Bart Simpson T-shirts that were banned in school because they were irreverent and, screw the man and all that. And then all of a sudden the show focus changed from Bart to Homer. And all of a sudden it's like, here's Homer who needs to have a more original point of view and voice print. And
it's a family show.
Yeah, exactly. It's the kind of family that we can all relate to, which is the best part. So
when you look at voice matching nowadays, do you try to find videos of the original actor like performing that to try to match it so you can kind of see what they're doing?
There is something to be said for when you do voice match. Voice match to me, my interpretation, and this is a Brad's journey to it, not this is the way. With apologies to the Mandalorian for making. Yeah. Anyway. For me, it's about breathing patterns and inflection.
Okay.
The voice, either your voice print naturally or the way that you can shape it in the way it resonates can get about 80% of the way there. You're there. Because from what I know of the voice match as a thing in this city is some people, when it comes to celebrity voice match, they don't want one-to-one. They actually don't like it at all. Some people.
Wow.
And I'm not going to say who I've heard because it's secondhand information, so I can't say for sure.
Yeah.
But I do know that it does exist as we don't want someone who sounds 100%. That's like that whole sound alike versus voice match.
I kind of get it because when you're watching it, you can tell sometimes distinctively, they dubbed over a bad word here. And maybe they do want that so people know
exactly.
that wasn't the original performance that person was going for.
And a lot of it's like there was in Death Stranding, the latest Hideo Kojima game, which a lot of our wonderful colleagues and friends are in. There, I don't remember who it was, but I just finished it. At least I just finished the story portion of the game. And at the end of the credits was there was a credit for an effort voice double. Which is funny because I've actually done that as a voice match. Which is funny because the audition for this thing, which I can say it's been out a while, was the voice match for Tom Hardy in Venom in the theatrical movie, and they called for a voice match in the audition.
But they really don't want exactly.
They didn't even want really a voice match because it was efforts. It was all efforts. We just had to make sure that my instrument was close enough to his that I could sound like him fairly naturally so that when I did natural sounds that were efforts, pain, like this, there's a scene. Okay, it's been a while. I'm not going to say spoilers on Venom, guys. It's been 2 years.
Oh my gosh, I haven't seen it. Okay, I'm just kidding.
I'll stop.
I'm just kidding.
But no, the fun part of it is that my favorite scene is a scene when Tom's character, Eddie Brock, is trying to figure out what in the world has invaded his body because it's an alien symbiote that it's like this shark and remora kind of relationship, not quite parasitic but close. As we keep talking about parasites,
I was going to say it's looping back. It all connects.
It's the weird Venn diagram that our conversation's going to be. Anyway, so they put him into an MRI machine and accidentally figure out that the magnetic waves that the MRI puts out is actually quite painful to the symbiote. And so that was the most fun thing I got to do, other than the final battle as Venom, where you get to do pain reacts, and a lot of them. And it was almost like this, you're in a microwave being baked kind of thing. So it was like a lot of pig type noises. Like I grew up on a farm, so of course I know all about the sound.
I was going to say, for me,
we're not talking about
I just hear like
we're not talking about the rooting. We're talking about the We're talking about those kind of sounds.
Okay.
Those sounds that are either like getting attention or showing pain. It's either way, it's an alert sound. And so that's the kind of thing that we did. And we only worked on that I only worked for 1 day on the show, on the movie.
Curious, did they relate that to you, that it should sound like dying pigs, or is that something that you realized then that this is what this needed to sound like?
The fun part of it is that Tom did some creaturey noises.
Okay.
And they wanted to know what he sounded like, but he was not going to do it either through his agreement with Sony or whatever, however that worked out. I'm not privy to that. But he did do some of those, and those were provided as part of the voice match reference. And so, okay. So his idea is this, and I wanted to respect the idea that he had, but I wanted to like use it as a foundation and build on it.
Clever.
And so he did do something that I really thought was what I would call pigs in under duress sound. And that was that they gave three clips, I remember. One of them was mostly pain and fighting, and then the other two were just fighting and then trying to find a place for the voice. Now, they did use some of my dialogue, and they also used a lot of Tom's, mostly Tom's, but like the "We Are Venom" thing that was in all the trailers and all that was me, which is fun because it was like that whole really easy demon-y sounding voice that we can all do, just where you're just expelling a ton of air.
That we can all do that, but it's funny to me because I know that you have a very deep range that you can go to.
Well, thank you.
That is not being presented right now. And like I remember there was like a Cartoon Network promo that you did a while ago, and it was like I think there was like a duality thing happening.
That was a really fun project. I did do. There was almost every season. A lot of the mainline Cartoon Network shows do what they call a crossover event.
Yeah.
Where we'd have like that. All the X-Men titles in the comics would all come together and fight one big bad, usually over the summertime when people were at home and wanted to have something to do, right? Well, they did this crossover event, so we did Steven Universe, and they did Ben 10, and I can't remember what else, DC Superhero Girls, or I think. I don't remember all of them, but we started off as... Cartoon Network presents blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh my gosh, it's Hurley them. Blah. Oh my gosh, I love them. And it's like, oh wait, I'm sorry, I broke character. And go back
you
into
did like
it.
this character break thing. Yeah, it was really funny. Was that in the direction and the spec, or did you just come up with that when
It was in the direction.
Okay.
That was the concept. The high concept of the promo was promo guy starts marking out, like nerding out for the characters because they're all his favorites.
Yes.
And it was great because we ended up doing, I think, four full run-throughs of that script. And then we went back and we picked up, I don't know, maybe 3 lines out of the entire thing. And I know for a fact, because I delivered the audio, I did that session at home.
Yeah.
I delivered that audio and I went back and listened to it after the finished thing. They took take 1.
Oh, wow.
Take 1. They took it. 100% it was take 1. And I was like, that made me feel really good because that tells me that my instincts were just so spot on for that 30 seconds that we did that. They really enjoyed it. It was a really good privilege to be a part of that as a project. That was fun. Yeah.
Now, speaking of like vocal health, I remember you lost your voice for 6 weeks a couple of years ago.
I did. Almost 2 years to the week.
How did that happen, and what kind of remedies did you have to come up with to heal? And can you kind of talk about that for anybody else that might?
I am glad to
experience that.
I've been on a vocal health panel at Sag-Aftra, and when we talked about it, and Dr. Reena Gupta, who between her and Patrick Seitz, two of the people I love most in this world, they both saved my career. And for different reasons, vastly different reasons. But what happened is that we were coming up to the week of GDC. So we're coming close to it right now, in fact. So it's, like I said, almost 2 years to the day. Where the week before I was going to leave for San Francisco, I had a really busy time because I said I was going to avail out. I was going to check out for 3 days, and then I was going to be back, and then I had other things. So we started figuring out schedule, and we had a whole bunch of stuff lined up Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of the previous week. So I booked a thing for a national quick service restaurant chain who will remain nameless because I don't want to make feel bad whoever ended up with the job because, spoilers, I lost the job.
Aww.
Yeah, and I just saw the commercial that it was going to be renewed for the 3rd straight year, and that's like painful to watch because, you know, for those out there who don't know about union TV,
You make a ton of money.
you make a good amount of money. A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So back to the week. I just call it the perfect storm. On Wednesday, I had a session where I was told was not vocally stressful, and it was.
Oh.
And it was a pure miscommunication. It wasn't any one person's fault, and it was mostly mine for not really being that guy and hounding them about it. And
Well, to be fair, I think production usually doesn't know until they show up that day of,
sometimes,
typically too.
and I don't like that. I mean, I don't want to, like, you know, put it on the spot like that's a terrible thing, but
I get it though, because it's like
it
they want to
is-
keep things secretive.
yes, but
yeah.
if we're under NDA and we break it, fire us, move on.
Yeah.
Let that black mark be a reminder to us as talent. We shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be taking boothies. We shouldn't be doing anything that puts us in a particular space on a particular day, because anyone with half a brain can divine from those little pieces of information in the background of what you think is like, look at me, I'm working.
Where you're at, yeah.
You're in a place, you're working on a thing in a very specific booth at a very specific studio, who anyone who works there already knows that's where you're working.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, I didn't get that. One, you're making them feel bad. Two,
Yeah.
that's how people start doing, you know, Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew detective work, and start trying to figure out what projects are recording at what studios. And then all of a sudden, it's under the assumption that you said something or did something that you weren't supposed to do. But that's beside the point.
Yeah, side note, I feel like we should
Right.
always ask before
Oh,
posting on social
yeah.
media.
I'm
for
not
anything.
going. I think I've vowed myself I am not going to do any boothies ever again.
Yeah.
It's one thing if, like,
Did you learn
person-
from mistake in a sense, or no? Oh, you
I
just
I
saw
see it.
somebody else. Gotcha.
I see an inundation in our social media feeds of people posting boothies or checking in at places, and that's fine. It's vague enough. You know, if I checked in at Warner Brothers, then there's about 7 or 8 different things that I could be doing at any given moment on that lot.
Yeah.
But then again, the people who you're working for that you might be friends with on Facebook or follow you on social media, they don't know that everyone else doesn't know. They know that you worked there for them, and they're like, well, they're basically violating NDA by saying where they were. I don't want to put myself in a position that way anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to see that I'm working, because I feel like it is a disrespect to them as artists as well, because they might not be working that day. They may be needing a mental health day.
Oh yeah.
And that's important to us too. And if most people don't realize that, I mean, they do, because it's centered on their own mental health, but there's different kinds of anxiety and different kinds of mental health strength that people need to have bolstered. And I think that doesn't do anything except erode our ability to be good with ourselves.
So it's important to always have a mental health day, but then
Yep.
now it sounded like you needed a vocal rest day after the session.
Yes. Well, this session was scheduled for 2 hours. We were
Yeah.
done in 45 minutes, and it was all vampiric, guttural, throat-ripping, horrible fanged monsters.
Okay.
Bipedal, but fanged, you know, monsters. And it was really, really heavy on me. I did not know this.
Was your vocal cords hurting at any point at all? 'Cause
Yeah, a lot.
I've heard different things where you can actually like hemorrhage a vocal cord
Yep.
without knowing it because it doesn't hurt.
Yep.
Or it can hurt.
There's no real pain receptors in your vocal cords specifically.
Yeah.
And so you could develop a polyp, you could hemorrhage a cord, and it basically under a scope looks like a giant red streak. Could end up looking like a blood blister.
Is that what you ended up having?
I had a partial polyp.
Okay.
And what happens is whenever your cords smack together, and this is really, really rudimentary, they do it 1,000 times in a minute.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the wave that they create when they hit together perfectly. There's a positive interruption in the waveform where it creates your resonance. If there is a little bump or a pimple, then you're not. Then it looks, there's air escaping fore and aft it, and what happens is it starts sounding like that you have a cold or that you're wheezing almost, where it's like this all the time. This is full voice. It's put on right now, but that's essentially what it sounded like. And then it got worse. It got worse because that Friday I had another video game session. I had a video game session. This was an anime series that I was working on that I did on the Wednesday, and that I had already confirmed over the weekend to do something on Monday, which was World of Warcraft. And made it through. I was rough. I was like, okay, I'm gonna need some time. Sunday night, my agent called me saying that I had booked this quick service restaurant and that we needed Wednesday. Well, Wednesday was going to be the day I was going to go. I was going to go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to GDC, and I'm like, okay, well, I can't cancel my flight because I was doing Southwest, so I'll just get the money back in credit. I'm fine. I'm just not going to go to GDC. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fine, because I'll make some money. Mm-hmm. Well, Sunday she calls me to lock this in, and it's like, hi. And she's like, what are you saying? What is this? Wait, no, what? Huh? No. Please tell me you're joking with me right now. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do the voice anymore because it's not good for you. It's like whispering, bad for you.
Yeah. No, I get you.
Yeah. So I was like, well, let's just hold Wednesday. Let's do the thing. And you give me updates. And Monday comes around, and I had a confirmed session for World of Warcraft because I was leaving on Tuesday. So like we said, up until the minute we were leaving, guarantee scheduled time out of work, out of the town, and you're going to book, guys. That's just like almost a rule at this point.
I've been lucky enough to dodge that barely. I don't know how I've been fortunate where it's like I'll book something, but then it's like I'm able to bumper it in a weird sense, and it's not like during the time frame that I'm gone.
Well, if you just say your avails, you check your avails for I'm out of town on whatever.
Yeah,
you can almost guarantee that you're right up to the time you leave. They're going to like, okay, well, we got to make sure and get this done. Yeah. So it's fun. Yeah. And also stress and nerve wracking.
But I know you're not the only one to say this. I've heard many voice actors say, book a vacation and you will be working.
It's like, let's take a vacation every 4 weeks. Not a bad idea. But so I go to LA Studios for my session, and Patrick is my director, and which was great because I already, I'd say I was about 60%. I thought that I had recovered. Then we get in there and we start doing a few characters, and we do a couple, and those were okay. Yeah. Ish. And then we got to the orc.
Okay, that's definitely more guttural.
Yep. And, how'd you get down? And it was like, it was a non-starter. And poor Patrick was still to this day, I send him a fruit basket every so often. He's like, we need to hold on. We need to take a break. Take 10.
That's amazingly respectful.
He did. And there are not very many. There are some who will not do that in this town, and it's unfortunate. But we also have to be better advocates of ourselves. Yeah. We really do. Mm-hmm. Which, there's a 25, 30 minutes worth of stories we could talk about alone today about that kind of stuff. But yeah, so Patrick puts me basically on hold for 10 minutes. I see him on the phone. He's talking to one of the producers at Blizzard, and I'm bawling. I'm just weeping, like pathetically weeping. Because
you're a professional.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had never had the kibosh put on one of my sessions ever until that day. Yeah. That was a shot to the ego and to just in general the psyche that, yes, it's one thing to be fired in the booth. That's a fraternity that I think we all will eventually be a part of. It's another thing to have your session halted.
Were you like having thoughts of like, oh no, I'm never going to work for these people again?
Of course
like
that? I am. Of course I would have. I have those thoughts because I'm an actor with lizard actor brain. Of course I'm going to think that. I think that we automatically jump to the worst possible conclusion that we're going to ever have come out of a situation, and that was one of them. It was like, as much of as wonderful friends as I am with the people who do casting and direct for Blizzard, I don't take that for granted. Yeah. I know that I'm going to get cast eventually in something that's right for me, because they know that I'm okay to work with.
Yeah.
I'm a decent enough person. I'm not a jerk. I don't treat them bad and all that kind of stuff. So, go by the Wheaton's law effect to everything and you're fine. I was worried. Because of course I was worried. I was worried in the moment that we put the screws to the session and we stopped it. Dead stopped it. Middle, about hour 10 in of a 2.5 hour session. And we figured it out. He literally puts his hands on my shoulders and he says, "Don't you think too much about this?" And I'm just beside
really
myself.
Good.
Yeah.
Because he knows that's already what you were dealing with internally.
Patrick is a wonderful actor before he is a wonderful director, and he is a wonderful director.
Yeah.
To have, I don't know who else that day could have been directing and made me feel okay. I might have had a full-blown panic attack because I just never had that happen to me before.
Yeah.
Never had a full vocal failure in session, like Phantom of the Opera, Carlotta squeal, what his effect was on her.
Yeah.
Whatever it was. Like that kind of nastiness. But also never had a session, just pulled the plug.
So did you have to go straight to an ENT?
No.
And
I didn't know what to do because I was basically in panic mode. I got out of the studio. I got into an Uber. I called the agency. I'm whispering because that's about all I can do.
Oh, no.
And Heather tells me I need to get on whoever will see me today, tomorrow. And so I called Dr. Lyon's office, who was the only other person who
in Burbank,
in Burbank, who was recommended to me personally. And they couldn't see me. And then Courtney Taylor had put me in contact with Dr. Gupta not 3 weeks prior to that, so that she could have examples of scoped throats for her GDC session that week.
Oh, wow. So she needed to see you anyway.
She was, yes. So
that's a little serendipitous
you
in a
have
sad
no
way.
idea. I mean, it is the best, worst serendipity in the history of mankind. Okay, the first world problems part. I was able to see her the next day because she wasn't leaving for GDC until Wednesday. You talk about an astronomical alignment. That is literally...
She's busy.
Yes. She was able to see me the next day, and I'm sure she was already loaded. Or she had I don't know. I didn't ask her because I know how busy she is, how wonderful she is. So I just met her, had just seen her 3 weeks before, and she's like, "Why am I seeing you now?" It's like, "I'm having a problem." Yeah, and so it was bad. There was a shadow of a polyp in there. She said, "You go home. Here's..." And I was getting sick too. So there was that too.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't realize it until then because she's like, "You have inflammation other than your vocal cords as well." So I got prescribed, an albuterol inhaler, a steroid inhaler, and 5 days worth of steroids. And she's like, "Go home and don't do anything. Don't talk." And I mean, don't talk. Full vocal rest. So I did. And the rest of that week was hell. I lost the quick serve restaurant job, obviously. Didn't go to GDC, and everything's, happening there. And I wanted to go there and support Dr. Gupta's session with the Blizzard folks and everything, but I couldn't do that either. So I'm sitting here just stewing, and, the worst thing you can do is be isolated and not be able to talk and communicate at all. And so I was okay the next week. So we did a reschedule to do a session for the pick up the orc. And I go in and I finish it, but it's not good. And I crack again. Well, this time it's almost like my left vocal cord where this was still not completely healed, one. But also, it almost kind of like
hemorrhage or something.
It more like atrophied. It's like there was like a seize, so it was like double bad. It's like this shade of a polyp was kind of there, but it was also like not working properly. And so I basically went on like complete vocal rest for, until I got up in the morning and I tried to do very, very light warm-ups.
Do you know if there was like any certain point of like no return in a sense where it's like, if you had not done this, you probably would have been fine, or you don't know?
There is no doubt in my mind, had I not done what the doctor ordered, I would not have a career right now. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you because I probably wouldn't be able to say, my voice would be completely and utterly unrecognizable to anyone who's known me.
Yeah.
And it's funny because
it's crazy.
It's there and then it's not. It's like, the first time for everything. Everything's, great until it's not.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal for me. And so I stayed home, and it was like I was 22 and had just quit college all over again. I had no life, and all I was doing was sitting around playing video games.
Yeah.
I didn't like the feeling of that anymore. It's like, I remember what this was like. I don't ever want to do that again.
Yeah.
And so I want to play video games as a relaxation and to do research for what's being cast right now, which is what everyone should be doing, whether they are a gamer or not.
So speaking of Warcraft, this was not your first session with them.
Nope.
It sounds like you were playing video games back when you were in college.
Oh, and then long before, yeah.
So how did that come about as your first voiceover job?
My first voiceover job
Probably technically wasn't World of Warcraft.
It wasn't. My first LA session, if
Was
you want
that?
to call it, was World of Warcraft. And it was in May 2016.
Okay.
Because I had just met Andrea at VO Atlanta that previous March, and we hit it off like we'd known each other our entire lives and love her to death.
She's rad.
She is. She's totally one of my favorite people on this entire planet. And I actually flew out, stayed with friends, and, very cheaply was able to get in and out of here for that session. And that was like about a month before we moved from Dallas. And but the first session that I would say on a shipped video game would have been it was a game for PlayStation Move on PS3 called Medieval Moves Deadman's Quest.
Ooh.
It was the people who did Sports Champions was kind of like the PS3 version of the Wii Sports stuff.
Okay. I remember the move. It had the
Had
the
the
glowy things. Yeah.
Ping pong ball on the end of the wand kind of thing. Yeah. Well, this was what we call an on-rail shooter type thing where you would work your way through as a hero, and I was a ghost of the very first king. King Edmund the very first, who inhabited a cursed or blessed, I don't know which one it is, an amulet. And so I was basically doing a really terrible Brian Blessed impersonation, which if you've seen Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, that was Robin Hood's father. He's boisterous and huge and talks like this all the time. And so it was like that with my own spin on it, and that was a lot of fun. And it just so happened who the project manager on that was working at Sony Computer Entertainment at the time, is Jackie Sladek, who is now at Side LA.
Yes.
And it was so funny because that's how we connected as professionals. And that was through another friend of ours who was also a friend of Andrea's and mine, Randy Ryan, who runs Hamster Ball Studios in Austin. And it's just the weirdest thing. They always say that E3 is weird because everyone attends every year. They just change booths, and it feels like that. This industry is so small when it comes to it. That we all move sometimes, and we all work on different projects. Actors, we that's what we're used to. But the folks that we work for. But that was the very first game that Randy helped me get cast in, and worked for Jackie on that. It was really fun because it was special.
That's
It's really
awesome.
special for me because it was the very first one that I'd ever got to sign a contract and have a weird, check from another state come in, and, not just getting PayPal for whatever something I was doing on Voice 123 that week or whatever.
Is that how you met Randy? Was through like Voice 123?
I met Randy through Mark Cashman.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I lived in Dallas, my wife and I decided to create a company, and we did. We called it Superhero University, and we decided to attract coaches that I wanted to work with, selfishly, to come to Dallas.
No, it's smart. It's marketing.
And it was, it worked. It was a fun little endeavor, and it if I could still do it and do the busy life I have now, I would still do it. But the folks in Dallas have a good handle on things. Julie and some of the other folks that are still there, at least most of the time.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think Julie's here now, but anyway, sorry.
Julie Shields.
Julie Shields,
Yeah,
yep. So Mark, I had as my very first guest for Superhero University. I helped fill his classes. I did a morning and afternoon class 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. And I also got to participate in the workshops as well, and we catered it and did all that kind of stuff. And we started doing that often. And we had people like Pat Fraley, and we had Tony, and
Gotcha.
a lot of folks who would come out that I want to work with, at least, so I get a chance to meet them and work, see, so they could see what I was capable of doing, because that's why we do these things.
Is that kind of how you got most of your training then? Was through these coaches, or were you like?
It was.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't take like acting classes in college. I was, the opera theater program was mostly singing, less actual acting, because, it was really hard for people to understand that you really couldn't. You kind of had to like plant yourself and sing, which is why opera doesn't necessarily have the best acting all the time, although that production concept has changed quite a bit in the last 15 years. But yeah, that was how I mainly got any voiceover education. Was I hear good things about a coach, bring them in.
Nice.
Try to work some deal. We had Mark, we had Pat Fraley, we had Tony, we had Marilyn Wisner, we had a lot of people who are really good friends with me now, that I've been working with, at least in that way, for a long, long time.
Well, the cool thing too is in that scenario, you were also giving back to the community as well. It wasn't like it was all just for your own intents and purposes.
Well, it came from a place of necessity for my own education, because the classes that were in Dallas, some are very repetitive, and others were like marketing kind of things. And then one of my dearest friends in the world, Cliff Zellman, runs an automotive thing. He now works for ACM as a demo producer in that organization. But we together, between the two of us, he had like the world's largest voiceover meetup group on like meetup.com.
Oh, wow.
Like 900 members in that thing.
Wow.
That's a lot. It's a great number, but a lot of people were like, I want to try this. I want to check it out. And then they wouldn't do anything with it, because it's like, oh, this sounds fun. Oh, this sounds fun. Oh, basket weaving sounds fun. That kind of thing. So yeah, it was built out of a necessity for my own education, but I started realizing that others needed some sort of education outside of the folks at Funimation, as wonderful as they were, doing coaching that was geared towards learning how to technical act for anime dubbing, which was great.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, Funimation,
of course,
there's a
it was
ton
right
of that
there,
work
and
right there.
that was the entire reason why I felt there was a need for something more than just that, because I wanted to work in other areas than dubbing, which I did want to work in dubbing, and did, still do. But realizing that other people were saying some of the things the same way, like, okay, well then this is the thing. That means I've got a ready-made audience for a coach like this. Coaches with prestige, coaches that are well-connected, coaches that understand the business, understand all of these concepts and everything. And so we did that, and then it was great. It was really good. I mean, we had, I think the last class we did was like April of 2016, when we were, knee-deep in boxes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So then when you got to Los Angeles, I know you're now part of SAG.
Yes, I am.
Can you speak a little bit about your involvement with SAG? Because I know that you have run for the board.
Yeah.
And there's probably certain things that, there's probably certain things that you would love to like seek change, or you would love to.
Very much. There are a lot of things I'd like to help enact change. And I have. I've done a lot of stuff, because whenever you get to Los Angeles and you are booked on another World of Warcraft session 3 or 4 weeks after you move, and then you're booked on another one a few months after that, and all of a sudden you're must join, panic ensues. What do I do besides drop $3,000 plus dues, and thankfully I was able to navigate that pretty well.
Yeah.
Although the timing wasn't the best in the world, because we went on strike 3 weeks after I joined.
Oh, the interactive strike. Yes. Oh, that was rough.
It wasn't
I mean, it was good for the community.
The end result was wonderful, and we did a great job, and all the best props in the world to Keith Farley and Phil and all the others that really took a front seat and really hit this situation head on, because it's the longest one that we had in the work stoppage we've had in the entire history of the union, either union combined or separate.
Yeah.
But we needed to do that. And I was very, very fortunate to have booked some narration and commercial work in that meantime, where I did not have to be tempted to work not correctly.
Yes.
And I immediately got involved with picket actions. I went to several. I think I only missed one of them, and it was because it was like out of town. Got involved with that, realized that if you want to be involved, you can and be involved. You show up and you get involved. Mm-hmm. And that's what it took. That's all it takes. It's not a high bar. Mm-hmm. For anyone who wants to help be a part of the change that helps all and does good for this community, all they have to do is show up, especially when it comes down, when you start hearing notifications about wages and working conditions meetings.
Yeah.
Because that's where we will hear from people what's going on in sessions. Mm-hmm. Like people who don't let you take breaks when you have vocally stressful situations in the booth. Making
that
sure
was a huge.
Well, I mean, that is the biggest
contention
thing.
of that strike. Yes,
and that was the biggest thing, was that there are a lot of folks who don't necessarily have the professional capacity as a voiceover director, but they do work for a studio or a development studio in the gaming industry. And the thing is that the people that we're working with now, since the strike has ended and we've come back to working with everyone, there's been a lot better communication. There's been a lot better respect on both sides of time. And
they added the low budget interactive agreement,
which was extremely important. The promulgated agreement that we had in place rolled over to a lower budget one, where we had different provisions in that helped us a lot and helped bring a lot of what we would call indie games into Sag-Aftra and be able to work. A lot of our more famous colleagues were able to then work on the game instead of having to have those folks directly reach out, and they have to unfortunately pass on them because they just couldn't work non-union. And we've had a lot of victories and it's not like I did this. I was there when the wheel went round, is like what I like to say. Like, I think I probably talked about the dealing directly with people like Netflix and Funimation early, like when I was appointed to local voiceover performers committee for LA, and that was wonderful. I got to sit in a lot of meetings where a lot of people were educated from a perspective of mine that I brought from being in Middle America, mm-hmm. where I got to see the struggle that people have working day to day for for $50 for a couple of hours in a dubbing session, or that kind of stuff. I came from a place where it beats digging ditches.
Yeah.
And that's the attitude that you have to have, because, and that's I think that's part of the problem nowadays, is that the outreach that we have doesn't shift the perception of us as actors that are crying about what they don't get.
Yeah.
And that's strictly the perception of people who do dig ditches for a living, because I've done it. I've done that. It's not a good thing that you want to do unless you just love getting dirty and you don't mind sweating a lot. And I didn't. I mean, look at me now. Don't trust me. I'm not that. But I want people in Los Angeles and New York and big urban centers to understand the plight of the people who live in suburban and rural areas. Mm. That, I think, is where the divide in this country is. It's not blue-red or rich-poor. It's huge. But the biggest division, I think, is urban-rural.
So when you're at these SAG meetings, you're always thinking of them in mind when you're voicing your opinions.
I'm thinking of the people that I'm representing, and now, I've worked my way to the point where I've been given the trust of President Carteris with great gratitude to be a member of the National Performers Committee, National Voiceover Performers Committee. And we've already had one meeting this year, and we've dealt with a thing that's come to our attention, which is important, and I can't really talk about it until it's been
Public knowledge, yeah.
Yeah, until it's been dealt with in a respectful way to all parties, and we come to an agreement with said parties and all that jazz. But I want to, because we have this Netflix deal, which was a great deal, and I'm so glad because we're starting to deal directly with people who are the content providers and creators, and I think we should do that more. I honestly think that it would behoove Sag-Aftra to help unionize esports commentators.
Yeah.
Because they are performers and broadcasters just like any performer and broadcaster that does the same thing that's not esports related. I mean, we have an entire division of Sag-Aftra for broadcasters.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
very similar.
It is extremely similar, and it's a way to bring performers of all kinds under our protection, and that's what we need to do. I think we need to be having much more outreach. We're trying to figure out a way to get more people to come in and stay in, as opposed to getting discharged and to go financial core or whatever. And it's really hard out there for a lot of folks because they want to provide for themselves and their family in an artistic way, which doesn't behoove them to going and becoming a barista or any other side job that is more structured and paid while they're in between acting jobs. And that shift in mind has been 20 years in the making because people have been doing voiceover work since 2001 online in this kind of delivery. So if we find a way that we can match that ease of delivery and also make it easier to join and sustain a membership in the union to more people, maybe even make the union an open union.
Yeah.
Like After was before.
Yeah.
It could be something that helps. I don't know the obstacles to why that wouldn't be a possibility. That's something that I would love to be a part of the communication on. But one of the big things I know right now that I hold dear to my heart is that the Netflix agreement is bringing a huge influx of new members in because a couple of 3 times they work on a Netflix union dub, they're going to be must join. And I know a lot of people who have been reaching out to me asking, how do I join FICOR? And I'm like, please don't. Please don't, because we are now in a position to bargain that no other subset of actors in this union in history have been able to. We can almost bring nearly every qualified, good, talented dubbing actor and actress into SAG-AFTRA, and then we can just say we're not going to work non-union.
It's very clever because I've been told that at least the animation folks in the union are the ones that show up the most whenever there's some sort of contract negotiation on the table. And so it sounds like this is a similar kind of
and I'm
philosophy is gaining numbers. And
I hope I hope we take this from an approach of we need to do the best we can to keep the new members staying in before they decide to dishonorably discharge. I don't want that to happen. And I think that this is a way to do it, but they're going to go, but I literally have 4 or 5 sessions a week that aren't going to be in this, and you're asking me to give up money. They don't understand because they've been hustling their own work for so long.
The importance.
Sometimes they don't even have it with an agent involved. Yeah. And so when
I've discovered that a lot actually with voiceover.
When they're in when they've built a small business for themselves, it's kind of tough. Yeah. And to change your mindset to, I might take a hit, but it's a bigger benefit to the whole, and that's an argument, a political argument of a different kind. Oh yeah. To be honest, and I know that I've not taken a non-union job for a very long time, and it's been a big struggle for me. Luckily, I have a sugar mama. I have a very
Katie is lovely.
I have a wonderful teacher wife
yes.
who she has to have the best patience on earth because she teaches 3rd through 5th special ed, but then she also puts up with me, so I know she has to have the patience of an angel. But I do have that, and it's fortunate for me, and I'm lucky, and I get to do that, and I make light of it. But I know that we have to budget very, very carefully. because I don't go hustling out for my own work like I used to. I am strictly union and strictly through my agencies, and it can be frustrating to them, I know, because I know that I'm probably leaving money on the table.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing to have to do, but I'm trying to be an agent of change.
Yeah.
For good, for the good of not just myself, but the good of the industry, because I recognize I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the people who came before me that did had these kind of decisions, made these kind of decisions, and struggled at times.
Well, additionally, you have been an agent of change in the fact that you, Tim, and Jay have created the VO Weekly Workout.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
Which spawned from another website changing and being bought out by another company.
Yep.
And that was a very great development tool in building a stable.
I hope so. I hope we've been able to bring the attention of new talent to coaches, agents, casting folks, and giving them the opportunity for a couple of lattes that they have to give up every time they want to participate. They get to,
it's only $10.
Yeah, $10.
Yeah.
And, you get a chance to read for someone that you might not have had that opportunity to be exposed to yet. And then you become more adept at navigating what they want out of their reads, which is very important. Because if you know who's casting, you know what they tend to like, or they tend to put into the send to the client list. Excuse me. Those are, I think it's extremely valuable.
Well, and it's educational too, because I know that you can see the feedback that other people are getting from their
That's a
reads.
big deal.
So you can know this person was on the mark, and it's a learning experience in that regard.
See, and that brings that I think that aspect of it a lot. I think a lot of people who would balk at joining and participating in VO Weekly Workout was like, I don't want my dirty laundry exposed. But the point is that it brings that whole, all of us in 12, 15 of us in a space, watching other people get feedback and direction right then and there. It brings that aspect into a remote setting. That, I think, is one of the biggest values that you get for $10, is not only are you getting to read for that person, yes, yourself, and get that feedback, maybe not with a redirect, but feedback, you get up to 199 other people that get that same feedback. So you technically are getting it. So if it could end up being a penny a piece, 10 cents a piece, for up to 10 cents a piece for feedback that everyone else is getting. It's not too bad. I'm glad we decided to do it, and we were talking about it from early on. It's funny how I met Jay way before I ever came to LA, but I met Tim like the first day.
Nice.
The very first day I arrived, that night I was.
You were surrounded by good people from the start.
and that I think is just as much as important as anything that I've done to be a part of this community and the industry. Is I know who to be around.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that we all as a community do circle the wagons, and we try to protect each other, and we try to do the right thing. Yeah. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Now, my final question I want to say is, when it comes to creating these characters, how do you go about an audition? Like, if you were to submit yourself for, say, the VO Weekly Workout, I know you don't, but if you were, and let's say...
It's not really fair that I do that.
No, I agree.
Not fair to really hold
fine.
the piece of the kingdom and participate.
No, that's why I'm letting people know. Like, it's not like... But, like, if you were to audition for, copy, how do you go about that? Is it different for commercial? Is it the same for... animation and interactive? Is it different for promo? Do you have I
think it is different. It different by genre is a pretty accurate way of determining it. I think I've shied away. I took an approach of I would always look at the specs and then I would go to the copy, and now I do it the other way around. I always start with the copy and look for clues there that engage my instincts without looking at the specs. Because if I'm getting the audition for my agents, I meet the specs.
Makes sense.
So I don't look at them. I mean, that tends to be one of the things that's in the email. But if I were, for prime example, for a commercial, it's hard not to look at it because that's part of the email. But I will tend to look at the script and see if it does lend itself to the spec that it says. Like I'm in another life besides an opera singer, I umpired baseball professionally for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so I've been hired as a baseball umpire vocally. I also did sports broadcasting. I did, baseball, basketball, football on the radio and live announce in the arena. So I have a very, very very specific niche that gives a lot of specificity and expertise to that. And I have been booked, a lot as a baseball announcer, as an announcer of any kind. I did spots for the NFL last year that was redubbing lines of action that was being shown in, to showcase a particular technology. Like there's this 360 technology where they can use supercomputing to guesstimate what a different angle of a play looks like based on computer AI.
Yeah, I think I've seen that in some,
Yep.
like I feel like tennis does that too sometimes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they do. They have that kind of technology now, and that was the Intel and the NFL doing a co-op to. It was mainly an educational thing that only runs during football games, but it technically was broadcast, so it was that kind of thing. And I've done that a lot. I come in on the CW to do announcer work for All American on the CW, the football announcer. That he tends to do what I call a announcer plus play-by-play, which is something that happens a lot in movies and TV, where it's not really the play-by-play person, because as an announcer, you do not talk as the game is playing. You talk during stoppages.
Is this something that you're picking up just from your past experiences then?
So much. My past experiences as, helping build my parents' house to radio to everything in between has affected me and helped bring my own unique point of view to everything. And that is, I think, the thing that most people need to tap into is
Just be yourself.
They show up to Los Angeles wanting to start over and be brand new and a different person, when they really need to tap in to the person that they were before they came to LA, because that is the unique point of view they bring to everything.
Yeah.
Now, if I do something for anything charactery, if there's art, I want to make sure that the voice that I create could come out of the mouth of whatever that is, either character, creature, or anything in between. Mm-hmm. So I start with that. I don't look at specs at all. I look at art.
Interesting.
Because that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. It's a huge deal. I think there was a special, like a little video package that somebody put together that my good friend Phil Lamar was doing about here's a picture of this. Here's a picture of this. And he just on the spot creates a character.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to be able to do. You have to give yourself full creative license to do that, because we're just the conduit for the truth of the writer.
Yes.
That's it. We're just a conduit.
Yeah.
We take whatever they've created, we place ourselves in the imaginary place that exists, and we just do it.
Yeah.
We're actors. We act. We do. And then I think that's really the limit of the character creation stuff. Now, if there is a unique thing in the art, if that character has an underbite, then I'm going to perform it with an underbite of some kind. If it has a lazy eye, yes, crinkle your eye, give it the Dwayne Johnson people's eyebrow thing. If you have something, if there is something like that, a physical tick, it does change the way you perform, even if it's just changing it enough. Because the old commercial thing was they can hear you smile. Yes, they can hear you smile, but they can also hear you crumple up your instrument like you're a stroke patient and that you didn't quite fully recover, and so you're going to talk a little bit where most of the sound is coming out of one side of your mouth. That kind of thing. Anything that gives you, Maurice Tobias, so another one of my coaches who I adore, she says at one point in your career, you have to understand that the talent is assumed. That everybody that's in the room reading for something belongs in that room.
Yeah.
That you have to do something that stands out, but also, more importantly, not just stands out, but stands out in a way that is important to the character and unique and correct and real and organic.
Yeah.
So I think whatever I possibly can do, I want to. That's how I come to the voice. And then after the voice comes, how does that person thing live in the world that it's in? And I always want to try to do one thing more than anything else, and that is through the performance, show thought process. Because we are not, like right now, I'm thinking about what I'm about to tell you.
Yeah.
I know there's an end point to what the point I'm trying to make. And so I want to make sure that what I say, and I'm not doing this affectedly, I'm just saying that this is what I do when I'm acting. I want to make sure
you're thinking of what the character's thoughts are during
yes.
That's cool.
And so I want the performance to lend itself to hearing a person, hearing them thinking, like coming to the words. Because sometimes we say things that have no thought. And those are easy to pick up on.
Yeah.
Blurts, exclamations, those things are usually done without thought. Those are as a full-blown reaction. But then other ones, you want to create something that is unique to that character where there's some fidget or there's some thought, or it depends on if that's where you pull the specs back in and you look at it and go, oh, this is a thoughtful person who's always in charge. He knows exactly. So he doesn't sound like he's thinking all the time because he's already thought of everything. So he's the perfect, he's the Gary Kasparov. He is the perfect chess prodigy, the Bobby Fischer. I know everything you're about to say in the way that you're going to say it. And I'm also slightly evil. And so, of course, that voice is you hear that voice on its own, you already think there's something calculating about that person.
Oh, yeah.
As a person who's like, I don't have thought process and I got to just react to everything. I'm pure id.
That's very clever.
That kind of stuff.
I like this. I haven't personally heard this before in voiceover, so it's really interesting to hear this.
Well, I mean, like I said, my journey is not necessarily the journey because I'm not the top of this industry by any stretch of the imagination.
Hey, you might be someday. Do you have a dream role?
I have a dream positioning.
What would
I know
that be?
it's not a role because I think that the dream roles that I want don't exist yet.
I got you. Ooh,
yeah,
nice.
I don't think they do because if something's already in production and I want it, it's already somebody else's.
Yeah.
Bergen taught me years ago. It's like Hollywood's seen everything. The only thing they don't have is you. Well, there's been about 3 or 4 things that I've auditioned for in my career, and every one of them I didn't get that was me. That was perfect. And because there are so many facets of a character that match with either my current or former mindset where I grew up, whatever. And it's unfortunate that I didn't have like a relationship or trust factor with that person to maybe been taking a chance on. Because I'm not a person who's as well known as some others, and I'm sure that those people have wonderful trust built with, and God bless them for it. I just hope that the stuff that's coming that matches up with my point of view on the world, I hope it comes. And I want to be an important person in a AAA video game title. I want to be lead or a recurring character on an animated series that people love. It affects them. It's narratively strong and it brings emotion and pathos because I'm all about emotion and pathos. I want to do whatever I can to help myself, but mainly everybody else. Yeah. Because if I help everybody else, then they won't leave me behind.
Yeah. Do you do coaching too?
I do, a little bit, but not much.
Okay.
I'm thinking about expanding doing that a little bit because if there's one thing I've learned, coaching is going to make me good too. It's going to help me. That's the thing about mentoring. Yeah, is you end up almost learning more than some person that you're teaching. And that's unfortunate, and it might sound selfish or something, but it is good because it helps you bring other perspective and point of view into your own sphere. And I think it's extremely important.
So if people wanted to find you, where would they find you on social media or on the internet?
At Brad Venable on Twitter, bradvenable.com on the website. If you need to book me, Atlas Talent.
Yes, and I'm Christy Kate. You can find me at Christy Kate VO. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Inside the Voice Actors Booth. Thanks again to Soundbox Studio Group for hosting this and for Brad Venable for being here today.
Thank you for
having
having
guys.
me. Bye.